This episode of the EV Resource Podcast is brought to you by Titan Auto and Tire. Titan has some of the very few independent auto repair shops in Central Virginia that are qualified to work on EVs and hybrids. And from hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. For more information and to schedule an appointment for your vehicle, go to TitanAutoTire.com. Coming up this week, Tesla's upcoming $25,000 car. Toyota engineers praise the Tesla Model Y as a work of art. The importance of aerodynamics with EVs, and much more. Well, hello, friends, and welcome to episode 144 of the EV Resource Podcast. I'm Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and interviews with industry experts. And I am so happy to be back bringing you the news this week. As much as I intended to record 2 episodes last weekend, the interview with Blake Fuller and Montu Kokar, and the news from last week, I just ran out of time. So to start this week's episode, I'm going to quickly cover some of the headlines that we missed, along with some other minor news stories before jumping back into the main portion of the episode. But before we do that, however, I want to thank a new Patreon supporter, John, no last name given. John has joined the family. Thank you, John. Welcome aboard. And I will have more information about Patreon at the end of the show. So with that, let's jump right into things. All right, first up, NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, has now finalized a rule that will allow self-driving cars to eliminate the steering wheel and pedals. Specifically, the rule updates the standards to clarify what equipment is required of manufacturers of self-driving vehicles. And just a reminder, the only fully self-driving vehicles on the road are not the ones that you can currently buy, but ones that are being tested by companies like Waymo and Cruise. Next, Ford is set to resume production of the F-150 Lightning after a short pause and a recall of 18 units due to battery cell manufacturing defects. There were no fires or injuries reported in the 18 vehicles that the company identified in the recall, and the company has been working tirelessly with cell provider SK On to confirm the root causes of the defects and, of course, fix them. VinFast has now said they don't plan to start production of their EVs here in the US until 2025. The current vehicles have not been very well received, they have not been getting good reviews, and the company is clearly just not ready for the North American market yet. BYD, the largest seller of plug-in vehicles in the world and the best-selling passenger vehicle brand in China, has recently cut prices on its Song and Seal EVs. The price cuts are likely in response to the discounts that Tesla implemented earlier this year. Volkswagen is investing $2 billion to build a factory in South Carolina for its upcoming Scout brand of EV trucks and SUVs. The plant is set to be completed and operational by 2026 and employ as many as 4,000 workers. Unless you've been hiding under a rock, you've likely heard that Tesla has started opening up the Supercharger network to non-Tesla EVs here in the US. Reports have been mixed, with many vehicles parking incorrectly in order to get the short cord to reach the charge port of their vehicles, sometimes taking up more than one stall space. Speeds are reduced for some vehicles, especially those with higher voltage architectures. Overall, though, it is adding more charging options to what was already out there, and we need as many as we can get. So, this is a good thing. Tesla's Investor Day was not a good thing for most people, though. The 4-hour-long presentation was largely focused on concept and not substantial news. In fact, I have really been struggling to pull anything from it that was actually what I felt to be newsworthy. I've watched the entire thing twice now and read a bunch about it from many other sources. I just haven't found it to be all that exciting, with one exception, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Next, Subaru has announced its president and CEO is stepping down on April 1st. Thomas Dahl will instead become the company's corporate advisor and will be replaced by the current executive vice president, Tadashi Yoshida. There is no indication at this time if this change will affect the future EV plans of the company. And last quick one for you, Recurrent has expanded their coverage of battery health reports to include range verification for retail partners and a tax credit eligibility information tool. Much like the Carfax reports that we've all come to rely on for vehicle history reports, Recurrent provides EV battery health reports and so much more. I look forward to my report every month for our Tesla Model 3, and best of all, it's free. I would really encourage all of you who own EVs to go to recurrentauto.com and see if you can sign up for your own free monthly health report. Phew. Okay, let's take a quick break and come back with the main news stories I've got to share with you this week. Hey guys, it's Zach here. Do you want to keep up with the latest EV news on a weekly basis? If you're listening to this podcast, chances are that the answer is yes. Well, I've got some great news for you. In addition to this podcast, EV Resource now releases a weekly newsletter that gets delivered directly to your email inbox. For those weeks, especially like last week where I wasn't able to get to the news, this is your way to stay plugged in with the latest news that you're looking for. For more information and to subscribe to the newsletter, go to ev-resource.com/weekly. All right, thanks for sticking with me. As I mentioned, I didn't find much of anything interesting to report from Tesla's Investor Day presentation that took place on the 1st of this month, the one exception being something that we already knew was in the works and coming soon. Okay, well, that soon might be on Elon time, which means that it would be delayed very significantly, but it is reasonable to expect that we will see this in the next couple years or so. So what am I talking about? Tesla's $25,000 car built on their next generation EV platform. The details about the platform were, in traditional Tesla fashion, very sparse, but we did learn a few new things from the recent presentation. First, Tesla is going to build a manufacturing facility in Mexico for this next generation platform. Secondly, the electric motors they plan on building are unique and contain no rare earth minerals. That would make the cost of the drive unit around $1,000, which is really inexpensive. I have shopped for electric motors for conversion project ideas that I've had, and you can't find anything in that price range that's worthy of using in a road-going electric vehicle. CFO Zach Kirkhorn said that Tesla aims to cut costs by 50% in the next generation vehicle platform, and they will be using 75% less silicon carbide without compromising vehicle performance or efficiency. Silicon carbide is used for high-powered switches and enables higher power densities and switching efficiencies in EV powertrains. So for them to reduce that particular component that significantly, that's important, and I'm interested to hear what they will be doing instead. In a recent interview about the Investor Day presentation, Tom Narayan, analyst at RBC Capital Markets, discussed the potential impact of this new vehicle on the market. Narayan believes that the vehicle could help Tesla expand its market share and increase adoption of electric vehicles worldwide. Here is a snippet of that conversation.
That's going to have huge implications on the rest of the industry, especially for the things I said earlier. He can come in, undercut the rest of the market. And this could be a global vehicle. It's not just penetrating the US. Now you can go after Europe, of course, China. So I actually think when you really dive into the details, ability to cut costs on chips, right, the silicon carbide by 75%. Overall manufacturing, he showed how you can change the way you make the car and cut the costs in general by 50%. I actually don't think that it was as negative. And I think people can re-watch it and come to the conclusion, yeah, a $25,000 car is coming.
With its new, more affordable vehicle and continued innovation in technology and manufacturing, Tesla appears poised to remain a dominant force in the electric vehicle market for many years to come. And as Narayan notes,
again, this $25,000 car is going to be game-changing.
So will it be? I have very little reason to doubt the expertise of Tom Narayan. The only question I have is, when will this take place? And for that, we'll just have to wait and see. What's interesting, though, is that Tesla is already the undisputed leader in the world of electric vehicles and will likely continue to dominate the space even without the inclusion of this next-gen vehicle, selling more fully battery electric vehicles than any other company in the world. But if you step outside the EV marketplace and look at the greater automobile industry as a whole, well, Tesla is just a small fish in a very big ocean. As I mentioned before, BYD sells the most plug-in vehicles than anyone else, and the world's largest automaker is a whale by comparison, selling almost 10 times Tesla's unit volume. That behemoth would be, of course, Toyota. And you could say, after decades of experience and many millions of vehicles sold of all types, they might know a thing or two that they could teach the much younger EV startup. However, it seems that in reality, in order to dominate the emerging electric vehicle market, Toyota should take a page from the Tesla playbook. According to a report from Automotive News, Toyota's engineers have conducted a teardown study of the Tesla Model Y as the company strives to learn what Tesla is doing so well. Impressed by the Model Y's simple yet efficient vehicle design created by advanced manufacturing techniques, they had glowing things to say. One Toyota executive actually said, quote, "Taking the skin off the Model Y, it was truly a work of art. It's unbelievable," end quote. So this is pretty spectacular, actually, and I'm really pleased to hear about this and pleased that it's become public as well, because Toyota has definitely been dragging their heels on moving to full battery electric vehicles. And it seems like this analysis of the Model Y is going to help push them towards creating all electric vehicle platforms, the first of which I believe they said is due in 2026. So that's not exactly right around the corner, but 2026 will definitely get here before we know it. And I am really excited to see what Toyota is going to do once they absolutely go full in on battery electric vehicles. Okay, I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and instead of talking about the recent news, I actually want to share something with you all that I learned this week about the very distant history in electric vehicles and how that has helped influence automotive design for the last 100 years. Few cars have had such a profound impact on the automobile industry, yet are overlooked in today's world. So I want to celebrate one of these forgotten legends, La Jamais Contente. And La Jamais Contente means the never satisfied in French, and this was built in 1899 by Belgian race car driver Camille Genetzi, and it was a pioneering electric car. Not only was the car ahead of its time in terms of technology and design, it also broke the land speed record, becoming the first vehicle to ever exceed 100 kilometers per hour and set a new standard for automotive engineering. La Jamais Contente's achievement played a key role in the development and popularization of electric cars in its time, as well as the advancement of electric motors and batteries. Genetzi's innovative design featured a lightweight chassis made from chrome nickel steel, which was powered by two Fullman electric motors. These motors drew their power from Fullman batteries, which were designed to deliver high levels of energy output with low internal resistance, something that was not very common in its age. To reduce wind resistance, the car was given a sleek, bullet-shaped body made from aluminum. The design was so aerodynamic that it was able to reach top speeds that had never been seen before in a land vehicle. La Jamais Contente achieved legendary status in the world of automotive history by setting a new land speed record in April 1889. The car was driven by Camille Genetzi himself, who pushed the car to its limits on the roads of Acherets, France. With its advanced electric powertrain, for the time, and aerodynamic design, La Jamais Contente achieved a top speed of 105.88 kilometers per hour, which is 65.79 miles per hour, breaking the previous land speed record of 57.6 miles per hour set by a steam-powered vehicle the previous year. This new record stood for several years until it was broken by another electric car in 1902. Nevertheless, this car's impact on automotive history was immense. It helped pave the way for the development of faster, more efficient vehicles, and its legacy can still be felt in modern-day electric cars. Genetzi's achievement in La Jamais Contente was a major milestone in the history of automotive engineering. It demonstrated the potential of electric vehicle technology and the importance of aerodynamics in achieving high speeds. Previously to its time, all electric vehicles were widely regarded as slow and impractical, and for good reason, as most of them were. Does that sound familiar? However, breaking the land speed record at the time demonstrated the potential of electric vehicle technology when combined with optimized aerodynamics. The car's success in breaking the land speed record also inspired generations of engineers and designers to push the boundaries of what was possible in automotive engineering. Sadly, though, La Jamais Contente remains a forgotten legend of automotive history. However, its impact on the development of electric cars, motors, and batteries, as well as the legacy of Camille Genetzi, cannot be overstated. As with many forgotten legends, we sometimes only really appreciate the greatest things when looking in hindsight. And sometimes it takes time for people to really appreciate these things, just like many of the greatest composers and visual artists of all time were not fully appreciated during their lifetimes. The most aerodynamic vehicles were not always popular with buyers either. Streamlining was initially employed by land speed record racers as a means of reducing air resistance and achieving faster speeds. But as engines back in the early 1900s became much more powerful, even more powerful than the electric motors at the time, these cars could more easily achieve highway speeds. And over the course of the last 100 years or so, the focus of aerodynamic design shifted from achieving faster speed towards improving fuel efficiency. And although enhancing a vehicle's aerodynamic efficiency is important for various reasons, the final outcome doesn't always produce a design that is favored by potential buyers of the vehicle. And one really, really great example of this is with the 1934 Chrysler Airflow. That was the first American car to ever be designed aerodynamically in a wind tunnel. The design improved the high-speed stability and overall efficiency of the vehicle, but it didn't sell well. Buyers were not impressed, and they did not like the aerodynamic design. And since then, several cars have focused on aerodynamic engineering, and many of those have failed to succeed as well. One, of course, that comes to mind very prominently is the EV1 from General Motors back in the 1990s. It had, for its time, a remarkable drag coefficient of 0.19. That, however, didn't stop GM from recalling all of them and crushing, I think, most of them. I don't only think there's like 6 left. Volkswagen had another great example, a diesel-powered hybrid with very aerodynamic shape, the XL1. They only made 250 of those, and it was ridiculously expensive. And perhaps the Toyota Prius is the most successful example of an aerodynamic-first design with its body shape. It seems to sell really well. It's super efficient for what it is, and because of the way it looks, it's often subject to very harsh criticism. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Cool Prius Said Nobody, like little stickers that you can get for the Prius on the back. That explains this very well. Aerodynamic shapes just aren't typically popular. So in today's automotive world, that focus has to be a little bit more subtle. But if you know what to look for, the application of improving aerodynamics in design is evident on nearly every vehicle on the road, from your most fuel-efficient gas-powered cars all the way up to a lot of the EVs. Well, all of the EVs. The overall shape of the vehicle is criticized a lot. You know, people are saying that all cars are looking the same. Well, that's primarily because of safety standards and aerodynamic efficiency goals that they're trying to meet. And you'll see from the wheel wells to the body design to active grille shutters, things like that. Manufacturers are focused more on making their vehicles efficient to meet ever increasing government standards for efficiency and carbon reduction from around the world. Owners have been doing this as well for years in order to achieve better gas mileage, save money, be more efficient, all of those reasons. These owners are called eco-modders, and some of them have seen incredibly impressive results over the years. One example that I would like to bring up is actually my own project. Before I got into EVs, I had a 2003 Honda Civic, and I was driving a lot at that time, and the whole purpose of the project was to get the best gas mileage possible. At one point, I set a goal for 100 miles to the gallon, and while I didn't ever get that far with it, and actually that was because I bought the Spark EV and stopped driving the Civic altogether, but I was able to get 83 miles to the gallon consistently at highway speeds, like 60, 65 miles an hour. And that was primarily because of all the aerodynamic modifications that I made to the car. Now, just like many production vehicles, this made the car look really weird, and not in a good weird way. It looked bad, I'll admit that. But it was all about function. It was meant to go A to B as efficiently as possible with the gas powertrain that it had. And as electric vehicles become much more prevalent on the roads that we're driving on, the importance of aerodynamics in their design is really increasingly emphasized. Because with EVs, unlike traditional gas-powered vehicles, the size of the battery is what's going to affect range based on how aerodynamic and how efficient the powertrain is. Where if you have a very inefficient EV, for example, the Hummer EV, You've got a massive battery pack in that. I think it's over 200 kilowatt hours. The battery pack alone weighs as much as a Honda Civic. And the total efficiency of the GMC Hummer EV, because it's shaped like a brick and it's ridiculously heavy, it's over 9,000 pounds. I believe its equivalent is as efficient as like a car that gets 45 miles to the gallon. So as far as EVs go, this is the worst, least efficient, absolutely horrible EV in that aspect. But you'll see so many benefits from having a very efficient and aerodynamically efficient design, because then you don't need to put as much battery in the car to achieve a longer range. And I think a great example of this is with Aptera. I've spoken about Aptera before. It's a 3-wheeled solar electric vehicle, and one of the reasons solar works is because it's so efficient. And if you're not familiar with it, it's very strange looking as well, as you might imagine. It's like a futuristic airplane without wings. In fact, the name Aptera actually comes from the ancient Greek word apteron, which means wingless. So the teardrop profile without wings is very applicable when it comes to how it's named. According to Aptera, versions of the vehicle will have a drag coefficient of only 0.13, making it the most aerodynamically efficient production vehicle ever. And when they put the 100 kilowatt hour, roughly, battery pack in there, it will be able to achieve a range of 1,000 miles. At least that's what the company is saying currently. So think about this. You've got like the Model S long range. Well, the battery pack in that's, I think, 110, 113 kilowatt hours, something like that. I don't remember the exact number. This is a smaller battery pack, but it can drive twice the range. You know, the best range on the market right now, I believe, is the Lucid Air, and that has a little bit more than 500 miles of range, but it's also a rather large battery pack. This, with the Aptera, can go 1,000 miles, basically double the range with the same battery. You move to the smallest battery pack, 25 kilowatt hours. In most EVs, 25 kilowatt hours, you're looking at maybe 100, 130 miles of range. Usually, you know, at best. With the Aptera, you're looking at around 250 miles of range. So it is significantly important. But the big point I want to get to is that vehicle aerodynamics has such an impact on the automotive industry throughout the entire history, you know, with the early EVs to the shift to gas-powered vehicles and now back transitioning to electric vehicles again. But the vehicles that are pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible, like Aptera in the modern age, they still are looking rather strange. And we'll see what that means for potential buyers. Now, of course, Aptera does have a waiting list of like 40,000 or something like that. But in the big scheme of things, when you're talking about millions and millions of vehicles sold every year, 40,000 really isn't all that much. And aerodynamics plays a role not only just for electric vehicles themselves, but also in the case of towing. And it plays a big role. So much so that aerodynamic design for trailers is not enough to overcome the massive problem that EVs have, or really any vehicle has, when towing. The added weight and air resistance makes the efficiency of whatever vehicle happens to be towing a trailer, it makes it reduced by as much as half, sometimes more. So whether it's a gas-powered car or truck, or with electric vehicles, case in point, the Ford F-150 Lightning, I have seen where certain examples of towing with the F-150 Lightning reduce the range to as little as around 100 miles. That's a big deal. But there are solutions kind of on the horizon. Last year, early 2022, Airstream showed off a self-propelled, I believe they called it the E-Stream. But that's just a concept. We don't have any update on when that'll be produced. So the true leader in that space right now is a self-propelled camper trailer, 27 feet long. So trailer, I don't know if is the right word, but towed RV, perhaps. This is the Lightship L1, and it is powered. So it has an 80 kilowatt hour battery pack and electric motors that help drive the camper when it's being towed, so that the range of the EV that's towing it is not really all that affected. If you had, let's say, a range of 250 miles, you're going to get close to that while towing this camper trailer. It has 3 kilowatts of solar on the roof, which make it perfectly ideal for camping off-grid. The other side of this, of course, is that if you're towing a trailer that has a 80 kilowatt hour battery pack and you need to recharge both in order to keep going, it's 2 separate electric vehicles that just happen to be attached. So charging costs, especially at fast chargers, would be doubled, basically. So there are those considerations. The other thing is that to have the privilege of such technology, you're going to be paying for it. The Lightship L1 starts at $125,000, but that is not the long range. The long range model that includes the drive motor and bigger battery capacity starts at $151,500. So definitely there is a target market for this, and it's not me. But with any newer technology, it will take some time, and eventually I expect we will see less expensive options hit the marketplace. And lastly, for the news stories this week, I want to talk about something else that you might be able to camp in, but it's a lot smaller. The 2024 Volkswagen ID Buzz, the reincarnation of their iconic Volkswagen van or bus. This is finally coming to the US. It's been on sale in Europe as a standard wheelbase model with a 77 kilowatt hour and the same powertrain that goes into the Volkswagen ID4. For the US, they are confirming that we will get a long wheelbase version. So it's stretched. It will still use the same powertrain from the ID4. So the base model is going to have a single rear-mounted electric motor that produces 201 horsepower. And you'll have an all-wheel drive option that will be 295 horsepower. So those numbers are exactly the same as the ID4. It should have a bigger battery than the 77 kilowatt hour pack, but I haven't been able to find any information on exactly what that'll be. I also haven't found any information on pricing. The current estimates that people are throwing around are that the base model would start roughly around the $40,000 to $45,000 range. Long range all-wheel drive might be more. So it's definitely not the most inexpensive vehicle. You know, Volkswagen being the vehicles for the masses. Well, the masses better have some money. But what's exciting about this is it will be the first all-electric, I'm going to call it a minivan, on sale here in North America. The only thing that's even comparable would be currently the Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid. And that really isn't much of a comparison because, of course, on all-electric range, I think that gets like 25 to 30 miles. So the ID Buzz, this is big. And depending on how well it sells, I imagine that other manufacturers might be considering their own all-electric minivans as well. For example, like the Honda Odyssey, the Toyota Sienna, a Nissan, Dodge, of course, and Chrysler are known for their minivans. So maybe this will help push the other manufacturers to make similar changes in their product lineups, because we need minivans that are electric. I mean, you need third row, 7, possibly 8 passenger vehicles that can carry a lot of people that are all electric. Now, one thing that I would change, and I don't think that Volkswagen is going to offer this, but I would have 2 battery pack options. One really small battery pack, maybe 45 or 50 kilowatt hours, that provides maybe a 200-mile range at best. And then, of course, the larger battery pack for whatever they're going to be working with. The reason I say that is because you have 2 different use cases for a minivan. You've got your daily needs, running around town, groceries, commuting to and from work, maybe taking the kids to and from school, that type of activity where it's shorter range trips. You're not going very far per day. And then, of course, the long distance needs of going on road trips. But if you were able to get one of these down below $35,000 with a really small battery pack that only provided, I would even say maybe 160 miles of range, that would be perfect for me, for example. I don't think Volkswagen will actually do that, but that's okay. I can sit here and dream. So that will complete the news segment for the podcast this episode. But there is a lot more to come, including the question of the week from, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago? The EV Resource Hotline announcements, and I do have some updates to share as well. So stick around. That'll all be coming right after this.
Do you own a business and want to reach EV owners and people interested in electric vehicles? EV Resource is welcoming businesses nationwide, both big and small, to become advertising partners with us across all platforms. The EV Resource podcast, magazine, YouTube videos, social media, and our webpage. For more information, please email Zach at hello@ev-resource.com.
All right, on now to the question of the week. And actually looking at it, it looks like it was last posted on February 14th, Valentine's Day. So a month ago, basically. And that's too long. So sorry about that. But I had asked you guys about public DC fast charging, the experiences that you've had, good, bad, or otherwise. And 38% voted that they've never had a problem, and it's great. That was tied for the people that said, I have some issues, but overall it's okay. 25% said, I regularly have problems and feel frustrated. And 0% said they can never get it work. And of course, those were a poll, so prompts that I had written in there. So actually, I am really surprised a little bit, but pleasantly surprised that things are going so well for the people that are listening to this podcast. So that's awesome. The general impression of the public DC fast charging infrastructure is that it is not good enough. This poll, even though the sample size is very small, it still gives me a little bit of hope. Charles Hall says, no problems in 5 years of Tesla ownership, 97% of the time charging at home, but 0 problems with road trips. Rajiv Narayan says, no issues with supercharging with my Tesla. Situation is very different with my Chevy Bolt. Non-Tesla charging has a long way to go. John Hurst, who now has my Spark EV, says that in particular, it isn't compatible with some of the DC fast chargers on the Shell Recharge network. And there's a few inaccuracies in other apps mentioning that the station has fast charging, but when he arrives, it's not fast charger. It's just level 2 slower charging. Andy Cooper says that he just completed a trip down to Georgia and used Electrify America DC fast charging the entire way. No stop, took more than 20 minutes to complete a charge to 80%, and the experience wasn't flawless, but decent overall. He says he'd give it a B+. So yeah, that's pretty good. For this week, I want to touch on the aerodynamic aspect again, and I'm going to keep it simple, yes or no, and then feel free to add comments. Are you turned off by vehicles that are designed with aerodynamics as the forefront of the design versus more of an afterthought and optimization effort? So vehicles that are designed with aerodynamics in top of mind, are you turned off by that vehicle design, or is that something that would work for you? So as always, I'm going to have that on the Patreon page. It is available for anybody to vote in the poll and leave a comment. It is open to the public. You do not have to be a Patreon supporter in order to participate. So I encourage all of you to go check that out. It's patreon.com/EVResource, and I will make sure that that post is pinned right to the top. On then to the EV Resource Hotline segment. This is your chance to be featured on the podcast. All you have to do is call in and leave me your EV question, comment, or discussion topic. And it's super easy to do this. Simply use your smartphone's built-in voice recording software, record your message, and do please try to keep it to 90 seconds or less, and then email that file to me at hello@ev-resource.com. This week, I still don't have anybody that called in. So if you have a question, comment, or discussion topic that you want to have featured in a future episode, go ahead and send that in to me. I would like for this to be something that catches on, but it doesn't seem like you guys are interested in participating in that way. Maybe that'll change. I'm not giving up just yet. Before I end the episode, I do want to thank our Patreon supporters. These individuals have chosen to support the efforts that I have with EV Resource with a small monthly financial contribution, and in return get many perks and benefits of being a part of this exclusive group. If you have been listening to the podcast for a while, or even if you're brand new, but you feel like I have earned your support, and I stress that part, I'm not asking for handouts. If I've earned your support, I'd encourage you to go to the Patreon page, look at the different tiers, and you can select even the lowest, which starts at $5 a month. Super appreciative. It goes up $10, $25. Check that out if you feel like there's value to that. A reminder to the current Patreon supporters and anyone else that signs up during the rest of this month, I am giving a 30-minute one-on-one Zoom call. So you all can talk to me about anything you want. It doesn't have to be EV related. Naturally, I expect most of the conversations to be EV related, but this is just time for me to get to know you and you to get to know me a little bit better. As always, I want to thank our Patreon supporters, especially Rajiv Narayan at the director tier. And actually, there is an update. Rajiv is now joined at that director tier by Andy Cooper. So Andy, thank you so much for upping your support. I really genuinely hope that you're getting value from that. And of course, if there's anything that those at the director tier want to change, part of the perks of that tier is that they can help influence the content of not only the podcast, but also everything else that I'm doing with the magazine, the newsletter, etc. So that is definitely one of the best perks, and that is at that director tier. Sadly, that leaves Christopher Lawrence alone at the executive producer tier, but there is room, so anybody that's interested, feel free to join him there. And then because it's the first episode of the month that I'm actually doing this part of the podcast, I also want to thank Alan Michael, Charles Hall, and Eric Weber at the producer tier. And for those who are not set in any tier, I do want to thank all of those fine people as well, including, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the newest member of the Patreon family, John. If you don't quite feel like Patreon is the way that you want to contribute to kind of pay back for all the work that I'm putting into it, there are a couple other ways that you can help me and help yourself as well. Because I don't have any mandatory membership fees or paywalls, I use advertising and affiliate connections to keep this podcast, the magazine, the newsletter, all of that free. So I encourage you guys to support the sponsors and the affiliate connections that I've made, because that is really how EV Resource is even possible from a financial aspect. So instead of listing all of them like I used to, I now have a full listing of all of the organizations and coupon codes and deals on the webpage at ev-resource.com/deals. And a big announcement, I have updated that. I've included a lot more. Some of the newer brands that I have included now are AAA, Badass Extension Cords is brand new, Crystal Travel, Dollar Shave Club, iRobot, Kingwin, NordVPN, Otterbox, Racechip, and Vroom are all new additions, so you can go check that out. Once again, that is ev-resource.com/deals. I also have become an Amazon affiliate, so under the shop section, ev-resource.com/shop, there are a bunch of different products that I have searched on Amazon and put on here that I think are valuable. So you've got your EV charging equipment, both mounted to a wall as well as portable. You've got charging adapters, smart splitters, toys and gifts, books, and now I've added apparel. So if you want EV Resource branded apparel, I've got currently a tote bag, a drawstring tote bag, unisex cotton t-shirt, and stickers. So all of that is on the webpage under the shop section. So check that out. If you're interested in any of that, that's where you're going to find it. As always, I invite your feedback via email to hello@ev-resource.com. And that'll be it for this podcast. So thank you so much for being with me, and I'll catch you next week.